Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. We're really thrilled to be part of this event, and it's a privilege to be here. And we were asked to, so we do have a film that's going to be shown tomorrow called Truth Rising that we produced with Focus on the Family and the Colson Center in Colorado Springs. Coldwater Media is our company, and we're just about 20 minutes north of Focus on the Family, a little town called Palmer Lake, Colorado. And we've been doing this for 26 years. Started with, and I just met a man here that we started with, who's an attorney, and I haven't seen him in 15 years probably, so that was cool. But we started in 2000 with a project called Icons of Evolution, and told the story of a teacher who was just presenting evidence to his high school class about information that contradicted the textbook and the way that evolution was being taught. And wasn't mentioning God or anything else, and the pro-Darwinian political groups that are out there descended upon him in this classroom and drove him out of his job, basically. He lost his job for criticizing Darwin's theory. And so that was our first documentary. And our most recent documentary is Truth Rising, which hopefully you'll all see tomorrow. But we were given the opportunity to talk about what has changed and what hasn't changed. And I actually thought I would be speaking to a lot of young people that were just thinking about getting into filmmaking, and I'm not seeing a lot of young people, so I'm gonna...
Maybe one or two.
Yeah, maybe. We were concerned about maybe being too negative in some ways, and we didn't want to scare anybody. So I'm going to be less worried about scaring somebody if this is the crowd. So, you know, what has changed and what will not change, but what is going to happen with AI and the fact that there will be such a massive river of content. How will you effectively compete against that and maintain your integrity moving forward? So we've got a number of things to say about that, and I thought maybe I'd start with just telling a little story about my first movie that I ever made. It was 1972, and it was black and white, 8mm film, and what happened was I got to give a little background here. So some guy in Wisconsin decided that it would be really cool to make, people like to have a cabin up north, and he thought, well, you know, it's really difficult if you got a cabin up north, you know, building something in a wilderness area, and so maybe we could just build this thing in a factory and then just drop it in with a helicopter. And while he was at it, he decided to make it look like a flying saucer. It was made out of fiberglass. It was this huge red flying saucer with windows all the way around that looked like you'd expect for a flying saucer, and then it was on steel legs. And you could buy one of these things for $10,000 and have it airlifted to your lot in northern Wisconsin. So the Toyota dealership in our town decided, well, it'd be kind of fun to drop one in the middle of the used car parking lot as a way to get people's attention when they were going by. And so we were driving by, my friend and I, Sean Riley, and we see this flying saucer in the parking lot, the Toyota dealership, and we thought, let's make a movie about aliens landing. And so we went to the local camera store and rented a camera for about $5 and bought a reel of film and got about a 3-minute instruction from Mr. Perkins, who ran the camera store, of how to run a film camera. And we made a movie about aliens coming from across the universe, landing in the Toyota dealership, and then shooting the first person they saw. We only had 3 minutes for the whole story arc. And so my friend was the farmer. He was playing a farmer because he had a pickup truck, 16 years old. And so the plot was, there was a bar next to the Toyota dealership. He would come stumbling out of the bar, see the spaceship. He would get blasted by the alien with a blinding flash of light, which was putting the camera about 3 inches away from my friend's, the headlight on his truck, and, for about 2 seconds, filming that. And I was the alien, and, we got costumes from Goodwill and tinfoil. And anyway, that was my first introduction to movie making, and that's how you did things in 1972.
What kind of medium were you on?
It was 8mm
film.
Yeah. So of course, there was no distribution for anything like that back then, and so I showed it to family and friends, and then somehow we got it entered into a talent contest at high school, so there was another 20 people that saw it. But those were your options in 1972, and where are we today? With every 5 years or so, and I saw my first video camera about the same time. It was a black and white camera on a long tether to a reel-to-reel recorder with, I think it was 2-inch tape. So in my lifetime, we've gone from that to AI, and with all the different stages in between.
Yeah, and I represent some of those different stages in between. My experience was, even if I look at my timeline, I've seen enormous change from when I started doing video production as well. And for me, as a kid, that was the family camcorder trying to make stop motion animations and, the things that every homeschool kid tries to do. The camcorder had, you're supposed to use photos to make stop motion, but the camcorder could only record a half second at a time. So it was 2 FPS basically is what that meant. But yeah, in my career, if we call that the start, now we've gone to these tiny handheld cameras that can really do some damage. And we're going to show you guys a couple clips here from some of the latest projects we've been working on, including Truth Rising, which we'll be playing tomorrow. And not to sell ourselves short, but some of those cameras were very tiny, and it's just really impressive how far it came. But now, like Jim's saying, it feels like we've started to turn a corner. I don't think we want to focus entirely on artificial intelligence for this talk, but we are going to definitely cover it at some level because we think it's one of the bigger things that's happened in a long time. And the future that it's going to usher in will dramatically change the world of filmmaking. And we kind of find ourselves at an inflection point. We need to look to the past and then look towards the future and see if we can learn anything about what will stick moving forward.
So I think as far as the major changes that we're going to see is going to be an increasingly difficult time getting anyone's attention. And especially if you're competing in the secular realm to evangelize, there's literally no limit to how much content can be created. Within a few years, once you're able to use agents to create it for you, and you can create with a few commands infinite permutations of an idea. And so it's hard to think about what will a film festival look like 5 years from now, or even less than that.
Next year and the year after, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 2027 is going to be a major inflection point in humanity, in the history of humanity. Really, people will start feeling the effects of AI this year and next year. So it's not a long ways away where we're all going to have to adapt to this new world, and I'm not exactly. And I got to say it's very depressing to me in a lot of ways, and I realized what was happening to me. We're doing a documentary on AI,
Which we will show you a teaser of very quick here.
yeah, and I was getting depressed, and I'm thinking about, what is going on here? What am I? And I came to the conclusion I felt like I was experiencing a death, and all the stages of grief that you go through with death. And the first one is that you don't believe that it's happening, right? It's denial, yeah. And then anger comes not long after that. But the denial was, could this really be true? And then you start seeing the results of things that are being created by AI. And at first you kind of shrug it off and go, well, I can tell that's AI. And then people would remind you, yes, but it's only going to get better from here. And within a year, you have things that you can't tell. And you go, okay, what is this? We all value the truth. And because that is Christ, right? And what happens in a world where you can't discern what's true? And so, and I think we're already there. It's not even in the future. We're there already. Probably half the content you see on social media now is AI. So,
well, and that's a good point, is that social media, even as a concept already, if we're talking about understanding the times, what's changing over time, one of the things that has changed is distribution. And, social media, when you were making your film in the Toyota dealership parking lot, wasn't a part of the equation. And now, with the way that content and entertainment works on social media, it's endless. It's a wide ocean of media. There's a lot of noise out there. And with the development of AI, we think it's going to get a lot worse. More and more content and maybe less and less meaning. So that has enormous impacts. And, so if you look at distribution, you're going to see impacts there. But it's tied into the type of content, and it's tied into, I think where that leaves you is that the team sizes kind of collapse. If you look at traditional production structures, and maybe someone like me who's earlier in the career than Jim, there used to be, and maybe still is at this point today in 2026, a career ladder, right? A path that you could follow. You could start as a PA, you could work for a local ministry, you could work your way up and eventually, have some hope of becoming an executive producer or a creative director. But what's a bit worrying is that it feels like there may be a collapse of that structure. The middle level, I think, is going to feel that hit. You're going to end up with a lot of one-man bands, creating content for social media, which is where the demand is. And so maybe at some level that, maybe we deserve it if that's what we consume. But I do think it's something to look forward to. We should be aware of these things.
So when I thought we should do this documentary on AI, there was a triggering moment, and it was this young kid interviewing a Silicon Valley billionaire, and they were in front of his house and it's this fresh-faced kid who's about to go into college, and he's asking for this billionaire's advice on what to study in college with the times that we live in. And the answer that he got, and then I kept seeing it over and over with different, Silicon Valley oligarchs answering the question, it is, well, it doesn't matter what you study, because whatever you study, it's going to be replaced by AI anyway. And then, like Elon Musk even said, even if you wanted to be a brain surgeon, that'll take you 8 years, and by the time you get your license to do surgery, it'll be done by robots, and it'll be better than anything that you could ever do. And I thought, what a depressing answer to give these kids. Stay flexible, and things are moving so fast that you can't possibly predict what's happening in a couple years. And I thought about myself and how, I thought things move quickly in my life. How do you plan a career, plan an education, take on a 30-year mortgage, any of these things that we take for granted in the kind of the social contract that we have in America, that if you work hard, you can get ahead, you can have these things. When you create a system that is changing as fast as AI, where it's doubling in capacity every 6 months and replacing jobs, which basically all of these guys say, if you're doing a job with a keyboard, you're going to get replaced soon. 5 years, 10 years at the most. What do you do in an environment like that? And so then my second phase that I went through as I was processing the death of normal life was anger, and thinking, what right do these handful of people have to impose this new system on all of us, 8 billion people on the planet, to accelerate the pace of change at this rate? And then they'll also throw out casual things like, well, you just need to retrain yourself. So then I go to their creation, Grok or ChatGPT, and go, what's the odds that people are going to be able to retrain themselves if AI is changing at a rate of doubling every 6 months? Comes back, you can't keep up with it, right? And it's more than happy to give you a contrary answer to its own creator, which is an interesting moment in time right now. I don't know if it's always going to be like that, but you just test whatever they say by their own creation, and usually it says just the opposite. So
actually, that's kind of a great tie-in point, because part of this teaser that we're going to show you guys is a lot of what they say.
Yeah, why don't we just show it?
Yeah, I guess I should say that we don't mean for this to come across as like super mega depressing, and we'll catch you after. We'll lift the mood.
No, we won't leave on that note. But. So our working title for this is Dreamkillers, and I think it's and we're at the worship thing this morning. I'm going, this doesn't feel like a Dreamkillers kind of event, and maybe we need to not show this, and then we thought, okay, we're going to end on a better note, but
we'll be okay. Yeah.
And we probably won't use that title, but that's how I was feeling when we started this project.
I think AI and superintelligence are going to be the most important technologies in our lifetime.
Think about like where we are today. We're at the beginning of an immense intelligence explosion. We're in the intelligence Big Bang.
AI is real, and it is going to change every industry.
How much are you spending, would you say, over the next few years?
$600 billion through 28.
What about Microsoft?
In the United States, around $75 to $80 billion.
We're building multiple multi-gigawatt data centers. The size of the site covers a significant portion of the footprint of Manhattan in terms of space. The thing is just massive.
The data centers are actually under construction. Each building's 500,000 square feet. I think this will be the most important project of this era.
It'll be the biggest data center ever built by the time it's done. And the scale of this project, like I do guess that a lot of the world gets covered in data centers over time.
We're going to start building these giant gigawatt data centers in space.
If I could, I would certainly slow down AI, but I can't. It's advancing at a very rapid pace, whether I like it or not.
This wave is happening much, much faster than you understand, that I understand, that governments understand. Our systems are not ready for this.
How confident are you that AI's promise will outweigh the perils?
I'm not confident, but that's what we need to get oriented around. It's definitely got to be shaped. It's the first technology that has no limit.
In the next kind of couple of decades, I believe there will be millions of people living in space. That's how fast this is going to accelerate.
Will this be bad or good for humanity? I think it'll be good. Most likely it'll be good. But if someone reconciled myself to, even if it wasn't going to be good, I'd at least like to be alive to see it happen.
I think AI will probably lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
If artificial intelligence vastly exceeds the sum of human intelligence, the AI is going to be in charge, to be totally frank, not humans. And we just need to make sure the AI is friendly.
We're starting to see early glimpses of self-improvement with the models, which means that developing superintelligence is now in sight.
I find myself doubting that they really have a sense of what they're doing. AI is to some extent always going to be brute force. The systems that AI is running are impossible. People can't control them. And they're not adaptable by the conditions of time and place or human judgment. They certainly have no compassion.
So there'll be many ways that things are impacting economically, control, truth, ultimately all the way to what is a human, how do human relationships work, and what makes people valuable. The impact that AI and robotics will have will be amazingly important. It will wipe out entire sectors of jobs, and most importantly, it will do it fairly quickly.
When it comes to technological unemployment, the only number I can justify is almost 100%. Because if you are creating a system capable of doing anything a human can do intellectually, and eventually through robot bodies and other means, any physical labor, then no job is safe. What do we do with billions of people who have 40, 60, 80 hours of extra free time on their hands? Nobody knows. Does it cause massive depression, suicide, civil wars? We have no experiments, no theories. It is completely uncharted territory.
AI eventually will replace us. We have our wonderful machines, and they put us out of business. The post-humanists, they think we can improve on humanity, and we get this super humanity. No. We're going to create something that's inhuman. And so with AI, humans have a genuine shot at thinking they can really be like God.
Not to be too doomerish about the whole thing.
So is that something you'd want to watch? So combined in with this AI movement is a transhumanist movement, and it's a worldview that comes from Silicon Valley. And to tie this into what we're doing here today, we have an anchor in Christ. We have a foundation in Christ. God, this is not surprising God, that this is what we're trying to do, right? And people are going to be, I think we're going to find a lot of people in crisis. And the church, and our hope for this is to wake up the church and say, be ready. Be ready for an answer to this. Because what they want to do, and There's a book coming out, We Will Be as Gods, by one of these guys. And that's what they're trying to do. I mean, this is a biblical story that is coming true in our lifetimes. And God has put you in this time and place, right? It's not an accident that you're here now. So we need to have an answer for this, and we do. And we need to communicate that, and that is going to be the challenge. And I think one thing that gets forgotten about a lot with young filmmakers is that we don't even do a good job communicating with each other. And this was illustrated to me very early in my career with Coldwater Media. My son came home from Christian school, and he said, "Dad, I think the Bible is boring." And of course, I was paying money, to that Christian school, mostly to teach the Bible. But what I found out is really in Christian schools all across the country, still to this day, the Bible is not typically the highest priority. Because it doesn't get measured in the same way that SAT scores get measured, and percentage of graduates going to college gets measured. And so a lot of times it's the high school coach who's, volunteering his side gig at teaching the Bible or whatever. And we don't do a good job of creating content for Christian students or adults, for that matter, in the way we should be. I mean, there should be just a flood of amazing content out there to tell the story of our faith and worldview. And it's underfunded, and it doesn't seem to be a high priority. And but it's one of the few places, say a Christian school or a homeschool, where we have young people who are not inundated with millions of choices of what to watch. A lot of times the parents are keeping control over their time on a screen, or the school is, and you've got a captive audience. And so I want to encourage people to think about serving that audience as well as humanity in general with evangelism, because that audience is going to get increasingly more and more difficult to reach with this flood it's a tsunami of content that is created. Once you no longer have to physically create it, just imagine how much is going to get done. And so
there's a quote, the Bezos quote.
Oh yeah.
Not to steal the quote,
Yeah,
but
no,
I think really relevant. One of the clips that we just saw was Jeff Bezos saying that we're going to have to put data centers out in space because we're going to run out of room here on the surface. But one of his quotes from almost 10 years ago now was to ask yourself the question, what doesn't change? What are the things out there that will stay the same moving forward? And we ask ourselves that question in the media world. And essentially, we've come down to truth, beauty, and goodness. For us, we have Truth Rising coming out. Hopefully you can watch it tomorrow. But really, like Jim said, we have, the North Star. We have a truth, and we have the truth. Holding up the message of Jesus, I think, is probably the safest bet moving forward. Because I don't think it would be honest for us to sit up here and say that we have answers to the quotes that we just saw. I don't think anyone really does. But I think we should have our eyes open and be thinking about these things and asking the question of what doesn't change.
Yeah, with Bezos, the answer to what doesn't change is that people will want more junk delivered faster for less money. And so that's how he answers the question, and so that's where he's putting his emphasis. But I thought it was a really great question in times where nothing seems to be unchanged. That's a good thing to focus on. What isn't going to change? What am I grounded in? And of course, we're grounded in Scripture and grounded in our belief in the eternal, and that God's got this, right? And that we're not supposed to operate out of fear, regardless of what's coming on down the line.
One other thing that I think, we keep using this phrase of like, there's going to be kind of a wave of information. What could we do in the face of that wave? I think what might happen is that there, in a way, could be more creativity, which is kind of a cool thing. I'm a very detail-oriented person. Usually, I'm the guy behind the camera. I'm a technical person. For me, where my mind immediately goes is, how can I solve this problem? What can I do to gain control over this situation? And one of the things that I think is helpful is to consider systems. My title's producer, so I end up doing a lot of pre-production, I end up doing a lot of post-production. But I think that in a world oversaturated with content, creativity, of course, is important, but repeatability might even be more important. The ability to create a brand, to create a consistent image, to develop an identity that you could stick to and repeatably hit that bar. To build trust, yeah. Because I think that might be all we have left. There's this interesting, shift towards social media, towards personalities, influencers, right? Well, what's driving that? I think for a lot of people, they are already feeling oversaturated and maybe overwhelmed with the amount of media that's out there. And so you're drawn to sometimes simpler media. I mean, the rise of YouTube and the decline of cable, I think, is a real testament to that. And some of the things that I've seen do really well these days are unedited, honest, documentary-style pieces. We are trying to embrace that change. It's interesting because I think Truth Rising is probably the last project that we will do with the old media mindset. We did scouting trips, we did a lot of heavyweight production with big crews, expensive travel, and it was fantastic, but I'm not sure how realistic it is moving forward. And that isn't just about AI, but I think it's going to make it worse.
Yeah, it probably is the last big budget documentary we'll do. And part of that is because what's coming with AI, it doesn't just affect the product, it affects distribution, and it affects budgets and business models. And so in many ways, it's kind of a race to the bottom that you get dragged down with. And so one of the things that I've always been concerned with, I come from a business background, and trying to create a business model that works. Very early, we decided to be a for-profit entity and not go the nonprofit route. And so what does that mean? It means you have to be able to create something that people are willing to pay for, that you can make a profit on. And that's always been challenging, you're delivering a Christian message, a Christian worldview message, and you need to do it and make a profit. And with everything that's happening these days, with the inexpensive cameras, with YouTube rising as the distribution medium, with AI, it just means less and less money is going into production, and And so the
There's
business.
always one guy who can do it all who's going to undercut you. You
Well,
know?
yeah, there's a lot of people that are doing that now. And so how do you think in terms of what your business model is going to be going forward? Whatever worked in the past is probably not going to be the thing that you're going to be doing just a few years from now. So it used to be that the biggest problem when you'd make a movie was finding distribution, and now it's, for what we do, where we want to influence people for Christ, it's how do you get people's attention? We're in the attention economy, as they say, and that just gets more and more difficult as there's a proliferation of more ways to get people's attention. The one of the quotes we saw by one of the it was the head of former president, CEO of Google, said basically the job of anyone that's in the business of delivering content for screens is to capture and monetize all of your attention. And I think the average kid now is looking at a screen about 8 hours a day, and adults, not, about the same. Basically taking up all your free time. And the guy from Google, Eric Schmidt, said, and we're even trying to monetize your sleep, by having you wear a device that's keeping track of your sleeping data. They can sell that too. So that's the competitive environment that you have for capturing someone's attention. And so that's why I want to point to thinking in terms of, well, where is there a captive audience that of Christians or other people that are really underserved, where I can create content that there's not a market for it right now, because you need special access to get into a homeschool environment, or to get into a youth group or Christian school. You have to be trusted. But think of, no longer is it just a matter of figuring out how to make a good movie. It's connecting all of those dots, including a business model that works for where we're going.
Yeah, and I think the trust becomes very important there, which comes from integrity. I think at some level you could really reduce it to that: creative integrity and consistency. Yeah. In a way, I think we have the ability to simplify that, because we don't have a subjective truth. We just point towards that truth. You could build some trust. I think we want to kind of lift the spirits as we come closer towards the end of our time here. And we have another clip. This is actually the opening of Truth Rising. Is it anything you'd add before that? Or?
Are we doing okay time-wise to have some Q&A?
Yeah, so we have a 5-minute clip here, the opening of Truth Rising. And then we would have about a 10-minute Q&A.
Okay.
How do you guys feel? Is that too long? No? Good? Okay, let's check out this clip.
Angkor Wat is famously the largest religious ruin on the planet. The temple is situated facing westward, which is somewhat unusual, and is built to mimic the universe, according to Hindu understanding. For centuries, Anchor represented the crowning achievement of the ancient Khmer Empire. And yet, for all its splendor, it was eventually abandoned. In time, the city was swallowed by the jungle and all but forgotten, until it was rediscovered by Europeans not so very long ago. But of course, Anchor's fate is hardly unique. The same story is played out time and again. The Parthenon, the great Aztec and Mayan temples of Mexico, the pyramids at Giza, which stood for 1,000 years before Moses. These once great monuments to the unassailable near godlike power of the pharaohs now serve as the backdrop to tourist social media posts. But why? Why do civilizations rise, flourish, and fall? And more importantly, is there any alternative to decline and fall? What of our own civilization? Today it seems particularly chaotic, divided, ashamed of its past, and disconnected from its foundation, teetering on the edge. Indeed, evidence for the decline of the West can be seen all around us. Is there anything we can do at this late stage, or are decline and fall inevitable? I'm now in my 80s, and I've decided to retrace a journey I first made in my 20s, but this time with a perspective of all that has happened since then. I've spent my career, some 60-odd years, thinking, studying, debating, and writing about the great questions of human existence. I consider this the calling God has placed on my life. And yet, the questions I've spent my lifetime wrestling with have never been more urgent than right now. I believe that we are at a civilizational moment. What do I mean by that? A civilizational moment is a period of crisis when a civilization, our civilization, completely loses touch with the inspiration that made it what it is. In other words, our foundational inspiration, our original dynamism is gone. We've lost it. It is at this point, like all the other civilizations that have come and gone before us, that we face three clear options. Renew the original inspiration, replace it, or decline. That's why I've come to Rome, perhaps the world's greatest monument to civilizational decline and fall. There is no question that once again the crisis is most urgent and the hour most advanced here in Europe. I've come back to reflect on the clarity and courage that we need in this troubled time.
If you guys want to actually watch the journey that Oz goes on, I'd love for you to do that tomorrow. But I think we wanted to show you this clip as a way to impress upon you, as a takeaway point, how important the moment is, how important it is to have your eyes open and look at the culture around us, look at the way technology is changing, and as we're here, here as filmmakers, I think it's very important for us to be reflective and to choose how we're going to act moving forward and what we're going to make, and choose to have integrity and choose to build trust. I mean, I think that's all that's going to stick moving forward.
I do see some upside with AI and the things that you're going to be able to do with it. There are many stories that we would have liked to have told, for instance, from the Bible, that we just would have never have the budget to do it, and now we're going to be able to do it. And so I think that as Christians, we should understand the times that we live in, understand that these are perilous times in many ways, that we need to be looking for what God's call is to each of us in these times. He has put you in this time and place, and He has a calling on your life. And I would encourage you to seek His face and find out what that is, and to be there for the culture as a reminder and as a force for renewal, because that's really what we need. And in that sense, I'm very optimistic that the church is going to rise to this challenge.
Yeah.
So on that,
we hope so.
Any questions?
Here, let me bring you a mic so you can. The people listening can hear.
Can I make what might sound like a crazy statement instead of a question? Because something occurs to me in listening to all this. I mean, posthumanists, we can't control this.
Put it closer to your mouth.
I'm sorry, humanists, we can't control this. I think the real future beyond AI lies with those who start thinking in terms of regulatory measures. Because I think there's going to come a point where, most of all, as God's children, we're going to feel threatened, but all of humanity will eventually be threatened. And they're going to realize that this is out of control. So like that last film was saying, you know, you're either going to revision or you're going to decline, you know. And I think eventually it's going to come to the point where all of AI is going to have to come out of under some kind of a master control. Now, you know, A, what's practical, and B, what's embraceable. But I think you're going to have to eventually, somebody, some genius out there, not me, of course, it's just a lofty concept, but somebody out there is going to come up with a program where all of AI will be regulated, or eventually it's going to come to the point where, you know, we humans are mostly harmless and tolerable, or we're just in the way. I mean, that's the logical end of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I heard one of these guys, you know, describe us as being like house cats in the future. That'll be, stuff will just show up, and we'll be fed and housed, and we won't know where it came from, and we'll be okay with that. So I hope that's not the case.
You said early that you didn't know what the film festival would look like in 3 years. My husband and I were just having a conversation with, and you might know his name, the guy that does drone footage for the Kendricks. His last name's Kohler. Paul Kohler. We were just talking with him, and he said that last year there was one submission that had a drone shot in it. This year that has almost totally flipped to all, maybe like close to all but one has drone footage. So that's how quickly it can change big numbers.
Yeah, and that's, I'm really surprised there was only just one, because it's such a grown industry. And even like when we were doing our Europe trip, you know, we were trying to do drone shots the way through too. But you're right, it's one season. It's almost like the meta can change. And I think that's sobering. I think it's worth thinking about.
We've already gone through the whole cycle with drones, where I think the first time we used them in Israel was, 2015, 14? And by the last time we were there, which was before the wars and everything, they were already telling us, by next year, you're probably never going to be able to fly here again. And so we've already gone the full cycle to where you can't even fly internationally in most places now.
Guys, thank you for telling the truth. Jim, we've been kind of working parallel about the same amount of years, and just that story, I remember being in Israel in 2007, and I had rented a slider, and it was broken, so they gave me a drone instead. I could fly anywhere. People just stared at it. We flew everywhere, through everything. Those days are gone, as are our 8mm days. But you guys are telling the truth. You're very depressing, but that's okay. I've got a Bible verse for you. This is to try to turn the table here. This is, I'll tell you where it says they returned and reported to Joshua, "Don't send the whole army. About 2,000 or 3,000 men are adequate to defeat AI. Don't tire out the whole army, for AI is small." So we have this promise in Joshua chapter 7, and I want to hold on to that today because I'm otherwise very depressed by you guys. Our careers are going away and the world is ending. No, but honestly, thank you for telling the truth. It's really helpful, guys, what you've done to collect all those quotes from our tech giants, our pseudo-gods of this era. We have to hear what they're saying. We have to process this as Christians. Nobody's going to come up with an answer. And even if Guinness wasn't so brilliant, what a great narrative voice he has. I wanted the narrator before I recognized it was him. So anyways, yeah, thank you for doing this. I hope we have time to process. You guys have covered so many things, budgets, technologies. I just came back from shooting a film in Romania where I had 2 cameras which were Arri LF minis with prime lenses, $150,000 packages, and the other 2 cameras I was shooting simultaneously with were Omni Pocket 3s. This is the new world of us, and for you to say that was maybe the last big budget film, I mean, kicking and screaming, but I appreciate you bringing it up, and I also like what you said, maybe now we have to create our brands while we can. We have to have trust. We have to be consistent. But more than ever, I think the gatherings of people like this in our churches where something is real, is there's a vitality that's going to come through a living, breathing biblical church that might be also new as the things that are dying. So that's more comment than question, but thank you.
Let's hope for renewal.
Anything, my actual question, or whatever, comment, whatever. Okay. So, from what I've seen or what I've heard, it seems like there's actually more money going into AI than is coming from AI. Do you think that if it keeps going down this pattern of not giving but taking and taking and taking, do you think it could even make it to be like this all-powerful whatever, even smarter than us or anything like that?
That's what they want to make. And they're calling that moment the singularity, which is the moment where a superintelligence is created that exceeds the sum of all human intelligence. And they call it a singularity because it's a moment in time where we have no idea what happens after that. It's by definition unknowable because a superintelligence is going to think of things that human beings have never thought of before. And the estimate for that time frame is at the most, people predict 10 years from now. But some are saying just a year or 2 from now. 2029 is thrown out a lot. So it's crazy, the times we live in, and what does that mean? And who can? And it's out of our control at that point, and that's what everybody's concerned about. I mean, we brought up the basic concerns about people losing their jobs, but there's the further question of whether or not it could mean the end of humanity, because we don't know what's going to happen after that. And in some ways, these guys who are building all this are playing Russian roulette, for all of us. And so, one of the guys we interviewed, Roman, how do you pronounce his last name?
Yampolsky.
Is an AI safety expert at the University of Louisville, is it? And, we asked him this question about, job loss, and he goes, yeah, I hear this all the time. You know, people say, am I going to lose my job? He goes, you're going to be dead. What are you worried about your job for? You know, he's super dark, doomer kind of guy. And that Elon Musk has said, you know, maybe a 1 in 5 chance of that happening, and which is, you know, that's Russian roulette kind of territory. This is what they're messing with. So the church is needed. The voices from the church, people that understand truth, understand God's plan for our lives, need to be out there talking about this.
At like a very simple level, you are right. AI definitely doesn't make as much money as being invested into it. And also on the point of control, or putting safeguards in place on AI, I think one of the things that's kind of causing us to go full speed ahead is that it feels like a bit of an arms race between different countries right now. You know, if we do put guardrails on or stop funneling so many funds into it, then China's going to beat us to it, you know. That's the argument. You know, and I don't think the two of us claim to be AI experts, but I think that's why, or maybe one of the reasons why it isn't profitable, but we're still going full speed ahead. Yeah.
So we're not experts, but the reason we feel fairly confident in what we're saying is we're using their own words to just putting them together in an edit so that, you know, when they say these things back to back, it's hard to imagine why they would be talking in such kind of doom and gloom if they're promoting this. And I think there's starting to be a political backlash already. You're going to definitely see it in the 2028 election where this is going to become a hot political topic, for sure. Yeah. So, anybody else have any questions? If not, I do want to say, you know, the world needs you, the country needs you, the church needs you. There's plenty of messages that need to be created for this time. There's no shortage of that. And if you don't mind, let me just end with a prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you for these people that have come here today and have come to this event. Lord, I can feel your presence here, and I pray for all of these folks and how you might use them and how you might call them to such a time as this. And Lord, I just ask for a blessing and protection for everybody here and what they will be doing in your name. And we ask this in Jesus' name.